Yeah, I don't get emotional over books. It's very rare. And then I read this book. This one, GGK struck some cards with me on a very visceral level. And I guess you didn't realize by now what I'm talking about. Guy Gavriel K's A Brightness Long Ago. This book is a very strong contender for my book of the year. 2 months in. Anyway, what is this book about? So the book opens with us following a counselor in the city of Sarasa as he waits to dispatch agents in the middle of the night. And whilst waiting to dispatch these agents, he thinks back to a time of his life that was very formative. 20 years ago, to be specific. And specifically, what he thinks back to is a young woman he loved for a season, and who he's loved ever since. And to the greatest mercenary captains of the age, and just the tumultuous events of the time, and also his part in those events. And he thinks back to Sarantium, City of Cities. So, before I even get into talking about this book, one of the most important things I think I need to talk about with it is that it's very much a standalone, but it's also one of GGK's most heavily connected one of his most heavily connected books. The story has two timelines. It takes place in the present and 20 years ago. And the story that happens in the present is a direct prequel to Children of Earth and Sky, one of GGK's other books that can be read as a standalone. And the story of the timeline 20 years previously, which is the vast majority of this book, is also a direct prequel to All the Seas of the World. So these books are very heavily interconnected. All the Seas of the World. Naturally you need to read this book before All the Seas of the World, because All the Seas of the World will have spoilers for this, just from the mere fact of knowing who survives. So there's that. Children of Earth and Sky, you can probably read it before this one. The ties to it are very light. We really only see this book really only contains a triggering event that we see from a different perspective in Children of Earth and Sky. But I felt it necessary to just kind of talk about how interconnected these books are, because they're more interconnected than any of GGK's other standalones. But yeah, so what I really want to talk about this book is let's retrack and talk about the book itself first of all. The counsel that we follow is Daniel, and we harken back to a time 20 years previously for the vast majority of this book. Like I said, when it was very tumultuous, like the patriarch of the Holy Jedi Temple was pretty much in conflict with the majority of the states in the area of Batiara, where a bunch of these city states, and they were all vying for they were all basically in contention with each other for different things, largely economic issues, so like trade routes and taxes and these kind of things, and power. And it was like it was a very tumultuous time, with everyone pretty much trying to set themselves up as a ruler. And that's kind of where we meet Daniel, who he is a servant at a particular court where something pretty radical happens, and then he sets out on a journey where his paths begin to intersect with two captains, two of the most famous mercenary captains of the age. So like if your city didn't hire one, the other one would be hired, and the two are always in direct conflict. And in addition to that, they have some very serious personal history between them. They're those type of enemies that the line between friends and enemies are very blurred, but they are very much enemies. So there's that. That's kind of the structure of this book, but by far the most important thing is in this book is just the teams that Gavriel decides to play with, and the first of those is love, love for a season, love lost, love found, however you want to put it. It's a theme that we see happen like occur throughout the entire throughout the book with multiple characters where where love plays a very significant part in them. And of course, this being GTK, it's not so much about the theme as the way that he uses it, the way he leverages it, his musings on it, the phrases that he uses. There's a phrase on page 2 of this book that just haunted me for this for my I think it's just haunted me since I read this book. And it came at a very potent time in the story, and as if that wasn't enough of a whammy, it just gets better from there. So there's that. Like, yeah, this is a book that I think will resonate with pretty much anyone who reads it. Everyone has experienced of. There's not a single person who will probably watch this video who hasn't experienced of. And the things that GTK mulls in particular over about this story, there's no way it would resonate with you on that. So there's that. And in going hand in hand with that, to give you an idea of what direction this is taking in particular, we have the other major theme of the story, which is the choices we make in life and the consequences, and just the way small acts and small decisions, inconsequential decisions, things we don't even think about before we do, the ripple effect they have on our life, and the way that they can chart a course that that could be unheard of, that we could never fathom we would go down. And those two intertwine throughout this story as Daniel sits back 20 years down the line and reflects on the events that happened. And of course, because he has the benefit of hindsight, what GTK does, as we see these, as he plays with this over the course of the story, we actually get a bit of an omniscient narration in here, where we'll meet a character, Daniel will meet a character, or a character will play a part in the story, and then they'll go on, and we'll see the way that their choice that they made in the story, that they took part in, we'll see the way that ripples out, and the effect it has on them literally throughout their entire life. Like, it'll be as short as a sentence, it'll be maybe a few sentences, a paragraph, whatever, but we will see the way that event impacted this person straight through to the end of their life. Like, it's ridiculous, because of course all of this is being done, like these are pretty potent themes already to work with, but of course this is just being done with Gavriel K's his magic, his skill. And that's not like those two alone are very compelling reasons to read this book. But also, this book has a extremely climactic event for Gavriel K's shared world. So between all of that, this is a GGK not to be missed. Like, by the time I was done reading this book, I used to say that Lions of Aldersan is my favorite GGK book. That's completely toppled. Like, A Brightness Long Ago is now my favorite thing I've ever read from him. And I don't see him writing another book that can top this one for me. It's visceral, it's heartbreaking, it's brilliant, it's wonderful. I can't describe the way that this book just wrenched my guts out when I read it. Like, there are some books that are an experience that you only get once in a lifetime, the first time you read it, and that makes no sense, but whatever, just go with me. This is one of those, okay? One of those books that has deep impact on you. This is one of those. I don't want to talk about this book anymore, because just thinking about it, like, my brain is starting to hurt just processing everything I think about when it comes to this book. Read this book. If you're a fan of GGK, read this book. You need to read this book. If you're not a fan of GGK, also read this book. In terms of its place in the whole his whole bibliography, this can be read at any time. It's a standalone. The only important thing to note when reading it is that you read it before All the Seas of Whirl, and ideally before Children of Earth and Sky. I read Children of Earth and Sky before this. It didn't really make a difference, but I think you would get more out of Children of Earth and Sky if you read Brightness before. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about A Brightness Long Ago. Absolutely beautiful book. And even if it's not, if it turns out not to be my favorite book of 2025, this will be one of my all-time favorite books, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.